What if I told you that nearly 2 million years ago, our ancestors were already cooking food, making tools, and traveling across entire continents? When you see this title about Homo erectus surviving 1.9 million years ago, you're probably wondering, how did they actually live day to day? What did they eat? How did they survive dangerous predators? And what made them so successful that they lasted over 1 million years? Here's the incredible truth. Homo erectus wasn't just surviving in the ancient world. They were the first humans to truly master it. They discovered fire, created sophisticated tools, and became the first species to leave Africa and colonize the globe. This is their remarkable story of survival against impossible odds. In what is now Kenya, 1.9 million years ago, the landscape stretched endlessly. Vast savannas dotted with acacia trees, rivers teeming with crocodiles, and in the distance, the smoking peaks of active volcanoes. This was the world that Homo erectus called home, and surviving here required skills, intelligence, and adaptability that would make modern survival experts look like amateurs. The first thing that strikes you about these early humans is how different they looked from us, yet how remarkably familiar they seemed. Standing about 5.5 feet tall, Homo erectus had a brain roughly twice the size of their predecessors. Their skulls were thick and heavy, with prominent brow ridges that gave them an intimidating appearance. But it was what was inside that skull that made all the difference. These weren't just another group of early hominids struggling to survive. They were innovators, problem solvers, and pioneers who would change the course of human evolution forever. The daily life of Homo erectus revolved around one fundamental challenge: finding enough calories to fuel their growing brains. Unlike their plant-eating cousins, these early humans had made a crucial evolutionary bet on meat. Their smaller teeth and reduced gut size meant they couldn't efficiently process large quantities of tough plant material. Instead, they needed high-quality, energy-dense food sources, and that meant hunting, scavenging, and eventually, something revolutionary, cooking. As the sun rose over the African savanna, a Homo erectus group would begin with a careful survey of the landscape. These early humans had developed an intimate knowledge of their environment that bordered on supernatural. They could read animal tracks like a book, identifying not just what species had passed by, but how recently, whether the animal was injured, and which direction it was heading. This wasn't just casual observation. It was a matter of life and death in a world filled with saber-toothed cats, massive hyenas, and other predators that saw humans as potential prey rather than apex predators. The hunt itself was a masterclass in cooperation and strategy. Unlike modern hunter-gatherers, who often rely on sophisticated weapons like bows and spears, Homo erectus had to make do with simpler tools. They crafted hand axes, beautifully symmetrical stone implements that served as cutting tools, weapons, and all-purpose survival instruments. These weren't crude rocks chipped into shape, but carefully designed tools that required planning, skill, and an understanding of stone properties that took generations to perfect. But perhaps more impressive than their hunting prowess was their ability to scavenge effectively. Homo erectus groups would follow vultures and other scavengers to fresh kills, then use their tools and group coordination to drive off other scavengers and access the nutrient-rich bone marrow and brains of large animals. This wasn't cowardly opportunism. It was intelligent resource management. Why exhaust energy and risk injury hunting when a perfectly good carcass was available for the taking? The real game changer, however, was fire. Somewhere between 1.8 and 1.5 million years ago, Homo erectus became the first species to control fire consistently. This wasn't just about keeping warm or scaring away predators, though those benefits were certainly important. Fire fundamentally changed how these early humans could extract nutrients from their environment. Cooking meat made it easier to digest and unlocked more calories from the same amount of food. Cooking tough plant materials made previously inedible foods accessible. Most importantly, cooking allowed them to spend less time chewing and digesting, freeing up energy that could be redirected to growing larger brains. The social implications of controlled fire were just as significant. Gathering around a fire in the evening created opportunities for communication, planning, and knowledge transfer that hadn't existed before. These weren't just family groups huddled together for warmth. They were communities sharing information about weather patterns, animal behavior, and tool-making techniques. The extended daylight, provided by fire, allowed for more complex tool creation and maintenance. It's not an exaggeration to say that fire made civilization possible, and it all began with Homo erectus nearly 2 million years ago. As these early humans mastered their African homeland, something unprecedented happened. They began to leave. Around 1.8 million years ago, groups of Homo erectus started migrating out of Africa, becoming the first human species to colonize other continents. This wasn't a single dramatic exodus, but a gradual expansion that took place over hundreds of thousands of years. Following river valleys and coastal routes, they spread across the Middle East, into Asia, and eventually reached as far as Java and China. The challenges they faced during this expansion were staggering. Each new environment brought different predators, different food sources, and different climate conditions. In Georgia, they encountered harsh winters that required new strategies for shelter and food storage. In Indonesia, they navigated dense tropical forests filled with tigers, orangutans, and other dangerous wildlife. In China, they adapted to temperate climates and seasonal changes that demanded long-term planning and resource management. What makes their success even more remarkable is that they achieved all of this with Stone Age technology and group sizes that rarely exceeded a few dozen individuals. They had no written language to preserve knowledge, no domesticated animals to help with hunting or transportation, and no metal tools to make their work easier. Everything they accomplished was the result of intelligence, cooperation, and an almost supernatural ability to adapt to new challenges. The daily social structure of these groups reveals just how sophisticated Homo erectus society had become. Evidence suggests they cared for disabled group members, sharing food with individuals who couldn't contribute to hunting or gathering. They had complex tool-making traditions that were passed down through generations, with subtle regional variations that suggest cultural development. Some groups developed specialized tools for different environments, lighter, more portable implements for nomadic groups, and heavier, more durable tools for settled communities. Their living arrangements were equally impressive. Rather than simply finding shelter wherever night fell, Homo erectus groups carefully selected and modified living spaces. They created windbreaks, arranged stones to form hearths, and organized their camps with designated areas for tool-making, food preparation, and waste disposal. Archaeological sites show evidence of repeated occupation over many years, suggesting that successful locations were remembered and returned to seasonally. The children of these groups grew up in an environment that would challenge even the most capable modern adults. By the age of 6 or 7, young Homo erectus would be expected to contribute to group survival through food gathering, tool maintenance, and camp setup. They learned by observation and practice, developing skills that took years to master. The fact that they consistently succeeded in raising children to adulthood in such a dangerous environment speaks to their remarkable parenting abilities and social cooperation. Perhaps most fascinating is how Homo erectus dealt with the cognitive demands of their lifestyle. Their brains, while smaller than ours, were remarkably efficient. They developed mental maps of vast territories, tracking seasonal changes in food availability across hundreds of square miles. They could predict animal behavior, weather patterns, and resource availability with accuracy that allowed them to plan weeks or months in advance. This wasn't instinct. It was learned knowledge that accumulated over generations and was carefully preserved through oral tradition. The longevity of Homo erectus as a species is testament to their success. For over 1.5 million years, they thrived across multiple continents, adapting to ice ages, volcanic eruptions, and dramatic climate changes that would have destroyed less adaptable species. They witnessed the rise and fall of countless other species, survived massive geological events, and maintained their populations through environmental challenges that we can barely imagine. Their legacy extends far beyond their own survival. The pathways they established across continents became the routes that later human species would follow. The tool-making traditions they developed formed the foundation for increasingly sophisticated technologies. Most importantly, they proved that intelligence, cooperation, and adaptability were more powerful survival traits than size, strength, or speed. They showed that humans could not only survive in the natural world, but could actively shape it to meet their needs. As we look back at these remarkable ancestors, it's humbling to realize how much we owe to their innovations and persistence. Every time we cook a meal, use a tool, or work together to solve a problem, we're drawing on strategies and abilities that were first developed by Homo erectus nearly 2 million years ago. They weren't just surviving in their ancient world, they were laying the groundwork for everything that human civilization would eventually become. The story of Homo erectus is ultimately a story about the power of human potential. With nothing but stone tools, controlled fire, and remarkable intelligence, they conquered challenges that would seem impossible to overcome. They remind us that our species has always been defined not by our physical limitations, but by our ability to think, cooperate, and adapt. In a world that was actively trying to kill them every single day, they didn't just survive. They thrived, spread across the globe, and set the stage for the incredible journey of human evolution that continues to this day. Their success wasn't guaranteed, and their survival was never certain. Every day brought new challenges, new threats, and new problems that required innovative solutions. Yet for over 1 million years, generation after generation of Homo erectus met these challenges head-on and emerged victorious. They are proof that with intelligence, determination, and cooperation, humans can overcome seemingly impossible obstacles and achieve remarkable things. The incredible journey of Homo erectus proves that human ingenuity and cooperation can overcome any challenge, and that same spirit lives on in us today. If this deep dive into our ancestors' remarkable survival story fascinated you, there's so much more to explore about human evolution and ancient civilizations. Smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. Subscribe now and join thousands of others discovering the amazing untold chapters of human history. Your journey into the past starts with one click.